Do you like adding layers to cards but want to do it in a clean and simple way? In this video, I show you how. Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. Today I have a card to share with you using the new Crafty Flower Butterfly Bush layering die set. So let's get started. This is the new Crafty Flower in the series called Butterfly Bush. It's absolutely beautiful. I love these layering die sets and this one is no exception. It's just very, very pretty. So you've got the guide on the back of the packaging, and then for the set itself you've got 3 layers of the flower. You've also got 3 layers of the leaf. You've got a stem and 2 really pretty butterflies. So I've cut all of my layers from gradient cardstock. I used Andromeda, Deep Iris and Wisteria from the new purple set. I used Mocha from Coffee Break. I used all 3 shades of green from the Green Meadows set, and I used Buttercream from the Summer Afternoon set. So like I said, I've cut all of my pieces out. I did that off camera purely just because I thought it would take quite a long time. It didn't actually take long at all, and I absolutely love these layering die sets. It's a lot quicker for me than colouring, and I really love the finished effect of all of the different layers, and it just makes the most realistic flowers. On the back of the guide, it does say to cut this second layer as your mid-tone shade. I ended up cutting it from the lightest shade. I actually think it would look really pretty either way, but I decided to go with this way and have my lightest shade in the middle and then have the mid-tone on top. I'm using 2-in-1 precision glue pen to add small dabs of that onto the layers, and then I can place them one on top of each other. What I really love about this 2-in-1 precision glue pen is that if it dries a little bit, it dries tacky so that you can use it as repositionable glue. Once you do stick it down though, even when it's just tacky and not completely wet, it will still adhere really well. So sometimes when it takes me quite a long time to add all of the glue onto the back with other glues, it does end up drying by the time I've managed to stick the layers together, but it doesn't happen with this glue, which is really helpful. So with this piece here, it does cut one kind of main layer and then there's 2 extra bits, so I just kept them in the negative portion so that I knew exactly where I wanted them to go onto the layer here. I just found that quite helpful. So again, I'm just adding some 2-in-1 precision glue pen onto the back of these pieces and then placing them down. I used the gradient cardstock today, like I said, but you could do this with ink blending. You could do lots of different ways of adding these together. And like I said, although you've got that lovely guide on the back and it is really fantastic to be able to see where you want the different layers to go, you can definitely go away from that and do different colours and things like that if you wanted to as well. So I'm just finishing up the leaf there, and I did actually cut another one off camera as well. I've got the beautiful butterfly here. I'm just adding some low tack tape onto the back of that because I want to keep it in place while I do some ink blending on top. I'm using the Golden Sunset Crisp dye inks and then a mini blending brush to add the ink on top. I wanted to keep some of the kind of lighter yellow area of the actual cardstock itself, so I'm just adding the darker shades of the ink towards the body and then kind of blending it out lighter towards the outside edges of the wings. So for the colours that I'm using, I've used Chamomile, Snapdragon and Marigold, and I just added a very small amount of this darker Marigold just towards the body of the butterfly. I've then cut another layer from Vellum Translucent Paper because I wanted to add this as 2 layers. I thought it would look really pretty to kind of show that the wings are sort of open and sort of maybe even flying in the air, or if you wanted it to kind of look like it's sitting on the flower, which is what I did in the end, you could still have it so that the wings are open because that's generally kind of what butterflies do. Here I was figuring out whether I wanted the vellum piece to be on top or underneath, and I am going to go with it on top. It does mute out the yellow slightly, but I was okay with that. I'm adding some more of that 2-in-1 precision glue pen just to the body of the butterfly. Now, the difficulty with adding vellum is that you can see the adhesive usually. So I tried to sort of add it towards the body, and actually in the end you can't really see the adhesive. It just makes it a little bit darker, and actually I wanted the body to be darker anyway, so I think I got away with it. If you know it's there, you can see it, but realistically I don't think it's really that noticeable, and I really love that added vellum layer onto that butterfly. I'm then going to stamp out my sentiment from the Sentiment Strips 3 set, and I wanted the sentiment to just read a happy hello rather than sending a happy hello. So I'm using some satin masking tape, and I'm just masking off that sending word. So I'm just adding some pieces there on top of the stamp, and then I'm going to ink up my sentiment with Obsidian Pigment Ink. I'm then going to remove that masking tape, and then I can stamp that sentiment down onto some white cardstock. I have in the past accidentally left that tape in place, but it is a really good way to be able to mask off sentiments. I then want to cut this into a strip, so I'm using the Terrific Tags die set, and I'm going to use this sentiment strip here. It is a little bit long for my sentiment, but I'm going to cut that down a little bit later. So for my first run through my die cutting machine, I'm going to adhere the die in place with some low tack tape. And then I'm going to actually place this die cut back into the die, and then I can do some partial die cutting just on that right hand side where that kind of fishtail banner is. So I'm going to place the die cut back inside of the die. It kind of pops in like a puzzle piece. You just got to make sure that you line it back up with the die itself, and then I can kind of look from the front, make sure it's in place, and then also look from the front and the back, I should say, to make sure it's in place, and then look from the front to make sure that it's going to be up against the sentiment where I want it to be. I'm then sticking that down with some low tack tape and then running that back through my die cutting machine, and I'm just going to run that kind of right hand side through so that it just partially cuts that banner, and then that fits that sentiment perfectly. I've then got a panel of white cardstock here, and I'm going to add some ink spray onto it with the jet black ink spray. I wanted to add some very kind of subtle splatters. In hindsight, I think I wish that I hadn't have done this. I think that my card was kind of busy enough. I'm very much a clean and simple crafter, and so I think this added just a teensy bit extra too much touch for my liking, but let me know what you think in the comments, whether you like the added splatter or not. I do like it, but like I said, I think it would have looked quite nice without it as well. But what I've done is I've just added some of that spray onto a mat, picked that up with a paintbrush, and then I can just add some very small kind of splatters onto my cardstock panel here. If I wanted some bigger splatters, I could have kind of splattered it directly from the nozzle in that ink spray. I set that aside to dry, and once it was dry, I've added some glue tape onto the back of the panel, and I'm adhering it down onto an A2 size white card base. So that's a finished size of 4¼ inches by 5½ inches, and just using a bone folder there just to press down that top fold. I've then got all of my pieces here, and I want to kind of put them in place so that I can see where I want them to go before I adhere anything down. The actual flower itself, the butterfly bush, is also known as a buddleia, and I did actually look it up because I wasn't 100% sure kind of how they sort of were placed. They are a kind of floppy flower, if that makes sense. There are a lot of these kind of flower petal kind of arrangements. I'm not quite sure what to call them in kind of like a whole bush, and so you get lots of these and they really attract the butterflies. They're just so very pretty. So I don't think in real life they kind of stand up quite like this, but I thought it would work quite nicely for the layout of my card, so I did go with it. But in real life they probably would be a little bit more floppy. So I've added that leaf there with some glue tape, and then I'm adding the stem here with precision glue. I just added it off the bottom of the card base, and I can cut that down afterwards. I'm then adding some more glue tape onto the back of the flower itself and just placing that down. I was thinking of adding it with some foam tape, but I decided to add it flat in the end because I am adding some more dimension on top. So I can just cut the bottom of that stem there with some scissors. I've then got my sentiment piece here, and I did cut another of the banners from black cardstock. I wanted the sentiment to kind of look like it was wrapped around the flower, kind of like you would do if you kind of maybe had like a bouquet of flowers. Now obviously this isn't that type of flower, it's very much like a garden bush type plant, but I still think it would look quite pretty nonetheless. So I've taken some twine and I'm just tying that in a little bow so that I can add that into that hole in the top of this sentiment banner. And then I'm going to add some glue tape so that I can stick that down onto the black piece, and I'm just kind of offsetting those. And then I can just cut the excess black cardstock from that left hand side. I'm then going to take some instant dimension foam tape, cut that down into a strip and add that onto the back. That's just going to pop that up, give that sentiment a bit of extra dimension. So I can just take my tweezers here to help me out with the placement, and then I can place that down. And I think this is kind of like a different way to add a sentiment as well. So I think it did look quite pretty, even though it's not very realistic. I've then added some liquid glue onto the back of that bow, and I'm just going to hold that in place while the glue dries. And whilst I'm holding it in place, I'm then taking the butterfly and figuring out where I want the placement to be. I did think it would go fairly high up on the right hand side, but I decided in the end to add it a little bit lower, and it kind of focuses the card sort of design towards the bottom half of the card. So I'm just adding some glue tape just onto the back of the body there. I want the wings to be really quite dimensional and sort of stand off of the card. So I just did the body itself, and then I can kind of move those wings so that they're really sticking out, and I think they're just so pretty how they look with the added layers. And so that's the card finished for today. I added a lot of layers onto the card, but I still think it looks quite clean and simple. I think it would look more clean and simple without those splatters. So like I said, I'm not 100% sure if that was the right thing to do or not, but let me know in the comments what you think. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hello there, crafty friend, Lydia here. Just popping in to say that you can get your daily dose of crafting tips, techniques and tutorials just like this by subscribing to the Altenew YouTube channel. All you need to do is click on that little bell up there and you will never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.